The ship didn't raise shields. It opened every channel and told a story. Cade's hand trembled against the living console, sweat slicking the lines of his palm where skin met the pulsing, bioluminescent membrane. The hull vibrated with the thrum of Cathari warships closing in. Each heartbeat a countdown. He could feel Vera's gaze on him, sharp as a blade, but it was her nearness that undid him. Her armored fingers hovered just above his wrist, not quite touching, but close enough that the air between them felt charged, dangerous. He wanted to say something clever. Instead, his voice broke on a whisper. For a terrifying alien warrior, you've got a pretty great sense of emotional depth. She didn't answer, not with words. Her hand finally settled over his, heavy and warm, and the pressure grounding him as the ship's neural core flared with memory. His memory, broadcasting every raw, unguarded moment of his life into the void. The world outside faded. There was only the heat of her touch, the ache in his chest, and the impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, this was what belonging felt like. It turned out belonging was a long way from where he'd started. 3 days earlier, Cade Vero's only concern had been not dying in a fireball. The Vagrant's engines coughed their last over Drathos, a planet so forgotten even the bounty hunters skipped it. He'd barely managed to steer the ship into a controlled crash, the hull scraping ancient stone as he skidded to a halt in the shadow of a temple that looked like it had been carved by giants with a grudge. He'd come for a power core. That was it. One priceless Cathari relic, and he could pay off his debts, maybe even buy a week of peace. The temple's glyphs had other ideas. They lit up under his boots, humming with a language he didn't know but felt in his bones. The air tasted of ozone in old secrets. He laughed, nervous, cocky, the way he always did when the universe got weird. I've ignored warnings in 12 different languages. What's one more? He hadn't expected company, especially not a Cathari warrior commander, 7 feet of muscle and ceremonial armor, eyes like molten gold. Vera. She'd caught him with his hand in the relic vault, and he'd tried a grin, a wink, a line about forbidden fruit. She'd answered with a fist to his jaw. The last thing he remembered was the cold floor and the echo of her boots. Waking up inside a living ship was a new low, even for him. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat not his own. Restraints, organic, flexible, held him in place, but it was the ship's voice in his head that rattled him. It spoke in images, in half-remembered dreams. A child's laughter, a woman's hand on his shoulder, the taste of rain on a world he'd never seen. Vera stood over him, unreadable, scanning his neural signature with a device that hummed in sympathy with the ship. She looked at him like he was a puzzle she didn't want to solve. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, voice low, almost gentle. "But the ship, it knows you." Truth is, he didn't know himself anymore. The ship began to change, reshaping corridors and consoles to match places from his past. His mother's kitchen, the cockpit of the Vagrant, a sunlit field from a dream. Vera watched, arms crossed, as if daring him to explain. And he tried humor. She didn't laugh. But she didn't leave either. And that was the first spark, the moment when the air between them shifted, when her hand lingered a second too long on his shoulder, when his jokes softened into questions, when the ship's hum became a lullaby instead of a warning. The Cathari fleet arrived in silence, a wall of silver and blue bristling with intent. The bioship shuddered, its hull flexing around Cade and Vera as if it could shield them by sheer will. Warning lights flickered across the living walls, red, urgent, alive. Vera's hand hovered at her side, fingers twitching for a weapon she knew wouldn't help. Cade felt the ship's fear, a pulse echoing his own. He looked at her, searching for something, permission, forgiveness, maybe just a reason to try. She met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "Yeah, they'll destroy us," she said, voice stripped bare. "You could run. You should." He almost laughed. "Now we see where your terrible ideas take us next." The ship's neural core pulsed beneath his palm, warm and insistent. He closed his eyes, letting the memories come. Every mistake, every desperate hope, every moment he'd ever wanted to be seen. The ship opened itself, every channel, every frequency, and poured his story into the void. Not just words, feelings, the ache of loneliness, the sting of regret, the wild, reckless joy of finding someone who looked at him and didn't turn away. Vera's hand found his, fingers threading through his with a gentleness that made his breath catch. The ship amplified it all. Her doubts, her longing, the way she'd spent a lifetime guarding something she'd never named. The broadcast swept through the fleet. No wave of raw, unfiltered humanity and Sathari memory tangled together. For a moment, the warships hesitated. Missiles hung in the air, then dissolved into harmless light. Engines powered down. The threat faded, replaced by confusion, by wonder, by something like understanding. Cade's knees buckled. The ship caught him, cradling him in a cocoon of warmth and light. He felt Vera's arms around him, strong and careful, holding him together when he wanted to fall apart. The fleet withdrew, ships peeling away one by one, leaving only the quiet hum of the bioship and the soft glow of a distant moon. He blinked, dazed, as the world settled. The ship's walls shifted, smoothing into gentle curves, the air sweet with the scent of rain and something like hope. Vera knelt beside him, her armor creaking as she lowered herself to his level. As she studied him, eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "You're unexpected," she said, the words awkward but honest. "You change things." He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "That's what I do. Usually not for the better." She shook her head, a small, almost smile tugging at her mouth. "This time, maybe." The ship purred beneath them, content, its systems settling into a new rhythm. Cade leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his bones, but for once, he didn't feel alone. Vera sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched, her presence steady and real. They looked out through the viewport, the stars scattered like promises across the dark. The future was a mess, unwritten, uncertain, wild. But for now there was peace. For now there was the warmth of a hand in his, the hum of a ship reborn, and the quiet, a electric possibility of what came next.